Have you ever wondered why you keep falling for the same kind of person, even when a part of you already knows how it will end? Why the arguments feel strangely familiar, the silence feels almost safe, and the chaos feels like home? You tell yourself this time will be different, that love will finally heal what was broken, yet somehow it always brings you back to the same pain in a different form. Maybe love for you has never been peaceful. Maybe it has always lived somewhere between hope and heartbreak. You call it passion, chemistry, destiny, but deep down it feels more like déjà vu. It's as if your heart keeps trying to rewrite a story that started long before you ever met them. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What if your idea of love isn't really love at all, but the echo of an old wound still waiting to be understood? What if the comfort you feel in chaos is not connection, but recognition? Your nervous system whispering, "I know this feeling. I've been here before." You don't choose this pattern consciously. It chooses you. It's the invisible pull of your past, the quiet repetition of the pain you never resolved. But what happens when you finally see it for what it is? What if love itself is not your salvation, but your mirror? Because Jung discovered something terrifying about love and suffering, and once you understand it, nothing about the way you love will ever look the same again. Carl Jung spent years watching people repeat the same painful patterns, falling in love with the same kind of person, breaking in the same way, and calling it destiny. He began to notice something unsettling. Behind every heartbreak was not just bad luck, but a hidden psychological script being replayed over and over again. One of his patients, a woman who seemed intelligent, insightful, and self-aware, confessed that she always ended up with distant, emotionally unavailable men. No matter how hard she tried to choose differently, she was always drawn back to the same emptiness. Jung realized she wasn't truly in love with these men. She was in love with the feeling of being unseen, the familiar ache she had known since childhood. That pain had become her definition of love. He wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But in her case, the reaction didn't transform, it repeated. The psyche, Jung realized, does not crave happiness, it craves completion. When we ignore our wounds, the unconscious recreates them again and again, hoping that one day we'll finally see them. So we return to what hurts, mistaking the pain for passion, because deep down, we are not chasing love. We are searching for the missing pieces of ourselves buried in the faces of those who remind us of our original wound. Modern psychology has confirmed what Jung sensed long before science could prove it. The body remembers everything. Our nervous system holds a record of every emotional experience we've ever had, especially the painful ones. The body does not forget what it learned in childhood, how love felt, how rejection burned, how fear shaped the rhythm of our hearts. So when we grow up and meet someone new, our body doesn't just respond to the person in front of us. It responds to every ghost from our past that they unconsciously resemble. This is why love can feel intoxicating one moment and terrifying the next. When someone treats you with real kindness, your system doesn't relax, it panics, because safety feels foreign, even threatening. The body has learned that love equals uncertainty, and calmness feels like emptiness. Neuroscientists now call this a trauma bond, the emotional addiction to people who mirror our unresolved wounds. The brain releases dopamine and cortisol in unpredictable cycles, turning emotional chaos into a kind of drug. You crave the highs, you tolerate the lows, and you call it love. It's not that you want to suffer. It's that your nervous system confuses pain with connection. You are drawn not to what is good for you, but to what feels familiar. Jung understood this perfectly. He believed that our repetition of pain is not meaningless. It is the psyche's desperate attempt to heal. We recreate the wound again and again, hoping that this time we will finally wake up and choose differently. Jung called these repeating emotional patterns complexes. A complex is like a hidden emotional magnet, an invisible force made up of forgotten memories, buried emotions, and old beliefs that silently shape how we think, feel, and love. Each complex forms around a wound, usually in childhood when something essential, love, safety, or validation, was missing. The child cannot process the pain, so the psyche hides it deep within, wrapping it in defense mechanisms and calling it protection. But what we repress never truly disappears. It waits, buried in the shadow, influencing every choice we make from behind the curtain of awareness. In relationships, these complexes act like scripts. Someone with a father complex might be drawn to partners who are cold or controlling, repeating the same emotional struggle in an attempt to finally earn approval. Someone with a mother complex might cling to nurturing yet unavailable partners, seeking the comfort they once lost. The shadow, as Jung described, contains all the parts of ourselves we deny, fear, or refuse to see. It holds both our darkness and our potential. When we fall in love, we are not simply choosing another person. We are encountering our shadow through them. The attraction feels magnetic because it's not just emotional, it's psychological recognition. The other person mirrors the part of ourselves we have long exiled. That is why love can feel both beautiful and unbearable. It is not only a meeting of hearts, it is the meeting of wounds. And until we face what the shadow is showing us, we are destined to mistake our unhealed pain for passion. Jung believed that true healing does not come from escaping the shadow, but from facing it with honesty and compassion. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Integration means bringing awareness to the parts of ourselves we have rejected, the anger, the fear, the longing, and learning to see them not as enemies, but as lost fragments of our own soul. It is not an easy process. The shadow resists exposure. It hides behind pride, shame, and denial. But the moment we stop running from it, transformation begins. To integrate, you must observe your patterns without judgment. Ask yourself, who does this person remind me of? What feeling am I constantly chasing? What part of me feels unworthy of peace? The answers will not come all at once. They reveal themselves slowly, like hidden doors opening in the dark. Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming whole.
It is the act of reconciling our conscious identity with the forgotten depths of our unconscious. When you begin to see that your pain was never punishment, but a message, everything changes. You stop seeking others to fix your wounds and start holding space for your own healing. Real love no longer feels like intensity, it feels like calm. Integration does not erase your past, it transforms it into wisdom. And once the darkness becomes conscious, it loses its power to control you. Then, for the first time, you are free. Not because you escaped the shadow, but because you finally embraced it. Those who resist this process remain trapped in a loop that feels almost impossible to escape. They repeat the same patterns with different faces, mistaking the familiar ache for connection. Every breakup feels like proof that love is cruel, yet deep down, they are reenacting an old wound that has never been fully seen. This is failed integration, the refusal to confront the shadow. It happens when people cling to chaos because peace feels too unfamiliar, too uncomfortable. They confuse emotional intensity with intimacy and fear that stability means emptiness. So, whenever love becomes calm, they unconsciously destroy it, returning to the drama that keeps their pain alive. But those who choose the path of awareness begin to notice the pattern before it consumes them. They start to pause before reacting, to question the pull toward what hurts. They realize that love doesn't have to be earned through suffering. This is successful integration, the awakening of consciousness. These people learn to hold both the light and the dark within themselves, no longer projecting their wounds onto others. They find partners who mirror growth, not pain. One of Jung's patients once said after years of inner work, "I used to think love was a storm. Now I see it's the moment after, the stillness when the air is finally clear." That stillness is what true love feels like once the shadow has been integrated. The highs and lows fade, replaced by quiet depth and emotional safety. Successful integration turns trauma into wisdom, longing into presence, and pain into power. It doesn't mean the darkness disappears, it simply stops ruling your life.
If you recognize yourself in this story, if you've ever mistaken suffering for love or silence for safety, know this: you are not broken. You are simply repeating what once felt like home. Every wound you carry was at one point a form of protection, a way to survive what your heart couldn't yet understand. But now, as awareness begins to rise, you have a choice. You can continue to chase the same pain, dressed in different faces, or you can finally stop running and turn inward, to meet the part of you that has been asking to be seen all along. The truth is, love was never supposed to hurt. Peace is not boredom. It's what love feels like when fear is gone. You don't need to earn affection through chaos or prove your worth through suffering. You deserve the kind of love that feels steady, safe, and real. The kind that doesn't ignite your wounds, but helps them heal. So ask yourself, what would it feel like to be loved without pain? What would it mean to finally choose calm over conflict, truth over repetition? That question is the doorway to freedom. Because once you stop craving the pain you're used to, you create space for a new kind of love, one that mirrors not your trauma,
but your growth. And if these words resonate with you, let them be a reminder that your healing is already underway. The moment you see the pattern, the spell begins to break. Subscribe for more journeys into the hidden world of the psyche. And in the next story, we'll explore why emotionally unavailable people are drawn to the most empathetic souls, and how that connection can either heal or destroy them. You don't want the pain you're used to anymore. You want to finally feel free.